Oh,
I have the frog the size of a tortoise in my throat right now. That's coming out sometime.
well, tell me, and I'll turn down the microphones.
Look out, Doug. Here he goes. Get the mic.
Doug and John in the morning. We need a theme song created for In the Morning with Doug and John. So if somebody out there would be glad to do that, we would be glad to have it. In fact, we should do a competition.
Oh, that'd be great.
So all these burgeoning song writers.
Yes, please put your skills and talents to this right now.
To this, yeah. I mean, somebody will at least listen to this.
Yes.
Like you, which might be more than the other songwriting that you do.
Sure.
Hey, good morning, John. It's Thursday morning.
Good morning, Doug.
May 3rd. Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that right? Should probably look. May 3rd. Which, by the way, happy birthday to Brantley Pagitt.
Oh, yeah?
I have a grandson. His name's Brantley. Today is his 3rd birthday.
Well,
Parents, Chico and Ellie.
happy birthday, Brantley.
Happy birthday, Brantley. I'm going to see that little guy this afternoon.
And how old is he?
2.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
I think that's right. I've kind of lost track.
It's easy. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon.
It's easy for grandparents to not know how old their kids are, their grandchildren are, especially when they're
I think that's when you're winning at grandparenting.
Is that right? That counts as an upset? Especially when there's only been 2 birthdays and you're like, boy, it seems like a whole lot more than that. That's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah. How are you doing? Doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing quite well. A lot going on. Yeah, really busy.
In your life or in the world? Or
in the world, yeah, a lot going on. You know, I follow the President of the United States like a fanboy.
Yes.
Like an opposite fanboy. So I had other dreams last night that didn't include Donald Trump.
Like literal dreams,
Yeah,
nocturnal dreams?
while sleeping. Yeah.
Oh, good,
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. So I count that as a win when every dream I have doesn't involve the President of the United States and his hair and Stormy Daniels.
I guess it really depends on what those other dreams are, I guess.
That's true. Yeah, or what these dreams are that have him in it.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was the one with him and Stormy Daniels. I just couldn't seem to get out of my mind.
No, there's some places on the internet, Doug, you should not go.
No, I'm doing fine. How about you? You got a haircut and it looks great. Do you want to throw it to our sponsor?
Oh yeah. Hey, there's a chain of men's bespoke hair salons, I guess, called Gents, and it's just all guys who get their haircuts there. I mean, there's women who do
it's one of those places.
Yeah.
Like the Masters golf tournament of hair salons.
Yeah, I mean, it's about that, about that level. But they do a great job. I've been there 5 times. I've seen 5 stylists and have gotten 5 great haircuts and beard trims.
So men only getting their hair cut.
Yeah.
Women stylists.
No, there's men stylists there too. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well, it looks great.
And and how, you can you can go in there and you can see the stylist and like what their price point is.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. Your ability to judge a stylist by appearance and
with the trembling hands. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I look for as I'm waiting. But no, so even like if you go with the cheapest, the newest stylist, the cheapest stylist, the least expensive stylist there you're going to have an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I've had from the low end to the high end. So
what does that run? What's the low end and high end at a place like patriarchyhaircuts.com?
Well, I think the haircut begins like at $31 would be the cheapest, which is about double a Great Clips haircut, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, if it produces that kind of look, I think it's worth it.
You definitely get what you pay for, Doug. Don't you think, people?
I think you look spectacular. So, in the morning with Doug and John, we like to chat about news stories, and I have gathered up a number of them. Mm-hmm. A number of them, my friend, including
what's troubling you, Doug?
Well, this is one of those hashtag fact checking ones that comes up on Flipboard.
Okay,
and I appreciate those. I like them when they check them. By the way, one of the fact checker sort of Snopes. Is that
Snopes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That came out is that the NRA did not ban guns at their NRA convention. The Secret Service banned guns at the NRA convention when Mike Pence is speaking to the crowd. So there was this meme going around. The NRA thinks guns are so dangerous they don't want them. Oh, no, it wasn't the NRA. They don't have the common sense to ban guns. It was the people in law enforcement who try to protect people of import in this country that banned guns at the NRA convention. Like when you have to say at the NRA convention that you don't have the right to carry those guns as a law-abiding citizen because we think it's too dangerous to put the vice president in risk, that ought to tell you. That's like the rule about, like, if you want to really be healthy, don't eat or drink anything that pregnant women shouldn't eat or drink, right? Wouldn't that be a nice rule to operate? If guns are too dangerous to have around the vice president, what are we doing letting people have them at school? For the love of it all?
Well, I mean, that completely makes sense. I didn't really think about it, but of course they don't allow guns in there. My God, he's the vice president of the United States.
Well, this being the point that, if guns aren't the problem, people are the problem, right? Argument.
You know what? What the problem
nonsense.
is unstable liberals who would slip in there with their guns amongst the NRA people and open fire on the vice president, and to make it be a false flag incident that was initiated by the progressives.
But in factchecking.com, on a more positive note, Sweden, they officially admitted that Swedish meatballs are actually Turkish meatballs. The Swedes have been stealing the Turks' recipe and pitching them over at the IKEA or wherever else they're at Costco where they're selling Swedish meatballs. It's Meatball Gate. They've had to admit it. It's a Turkish recipe.
Yeah, that is some culinary misappropriation. Hey, good on the Swedes for owning up to that. I mean, I'm sure that was like a big burden for a long time. Yeah. Whenever people would, mention their love of the Swedish meatballs, they're just a little like guilty in the back of their head, but like counting the money.
Right. They're like the women's ski team, Volvos, the meatballs, and all the Swedes are always looking down to the right when someone brings up the meatballs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Turkish.
All right. I love Swedish meatballs, man.
Yeah. I don't know that I care. My wife makes a fine meatball, but only when it's on spaghetti. Some people eat a meatball as a separate item, like in a dish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen that. I've done that.
Yeah, you know where they do that?
Why?
Sweden. That's where they do it.
Is that earlier when we talked about listing our stories in accordance to priority? Was this? Is this? Are we now on the way down from that?
No, I think that's a great story that Sweden had to admit that they've been ripping off the Turkish meatball recipe and putting their brand name on it.
What motivated this? I mean, what?
When was the last time that the Swedish meatball that the Swedes had to fess up to something? Like they're just running around all the time,
being awesome.
Yeah, has anybody ever? What was the last time there was a big news story about Sweden? And this goes all the way back to the King of Sweden from the early 1700s.
Oh, okay.
Like they've been running this scam for.
But I mean, it's in 1700s.
Centuries.
I mean, by now, can it just be Swedish, just adopted into being their thing?
Yeah, well, yes, as long as they, didn't culturally appropriate this Turk's meatball recipe.
Like the Italians with spaghetti. I mean, they didn't invent that.
Yeah, I don't even know that they did. I don't even know that it is an Italian thing.
No,
I think it's a
Asian.
Chinese thing. Yeah, noodles.
I just remember a commercial.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what I remember as a commercial when I was a kid?
Is it like an Italian guy? He's acting really Italian. And he's like, oh, we didn't create spaghetti and meatballs, but we created ice cream.
Is that? No, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But it does remind me of all of those like culturally inappropriate and sort of, kind of caricature commercials that they would have on of people from different ethnic backgrounds.
He's like the Chungking Chinese food.
Mm-hmm. The one with the launderer at the laundromat.
Yes.
And they say, "How do you get your clothes so white?" He says, "Ancient Chinese secret." I mean, when I was a kid, that was just. It was a very effective ad. I don't know what it was for, what product, but it stuck in my head. But that was so unbelievable.
Well, it being from the Midwest, like there was no like mythology that all our dry cleaning was done by Asian people. Like,
oh, that's true.
the poor working kid. I'm like, what?
Right.
Why is it
Yeah.
a Chinese
My
person?
mom worked at Pilgrim's Cleaner. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Yeah, that is funny, isn't it? That like why in my world, your world, we didn't think that that if you really wanted your clothes sparkly white, you took them over to the Asian cleaner.
And maybe that was like just part of the beginning of like Asians being smarter than everybody else. Is that she knew that it was an ancient Chinese secret.
Yeah, I wonder where that. The other one when I was a child was that public service announcement of pollution, and there was the man in the chief Native American indigenous dress.
Yeah.
He's not an indigenous person.
No.
Italian guy that they dressed up, made him look like an Indian.
Hey, there was a period of time where Hollywood really put a lot of Italian people to work playing the American Indians.
Is that right? Is that true?
Yeah, yeah. All those spaghetti westerns and had a lot of.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm. I mean, because the directors were like the Clint Eastwood movies were directed by Italian people anyway.
Oh,
yeah.
Huh. What do you got on your?
Oh well, here there's a couple of things here. The big buzz, of course, is the White House roast happened, and there was a lot of either fandom or furor that erupted from that event. Do you have any thoughts on?
I didn't listen to it. Mm-hmm. I have thoughts on that.
You have thoughts on this thing you don't know anything about?
I have thoughts on many things I don't know anything about.
The comeback should have been, never stopped you, John.
Yeah. That's pretty much what I have to offer the world. I am not, as a fan of politics and media around politics, I am not a fan of the Correspondents' Dinner.
Oh.
At all. I find it to be inappropriate. I find it inappropriate that the journalism and that they run this dinner as a way to honor the First Amendment. That's what they say. That's what it's about. It's their big annual. Hey, the First Amendment is great, but what they turn it into is some kind of a gala. Mm-hmm. They turn it into some sort of a party. They turn it into like a fun roast where now the journalists and the media, who need to have a bit of a separation in their worlds, it seems to me, and politicians all come together and act like, oh, we're just all chummy. It sends such the wrong news or wrong message between the news journalism side and the government, which are the news is supposed to hold the government to account. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be that cozy. The one thing in the entirety of the Trump administration that I would say, I agree with him on that one. The only thing that he's done that I would say, okay, that's a Trump thing, does not go to the Correspondents' Dinner. Now, he doesn't go for different reasons.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah,
I think presidents and senators and Congress people should stop going to that thing. And if they want to honor the First Amendment, write stories about the truth, and don't hang around with all your buddies and worry that if you write that story that you're going to get cut off from your source, who also happens to be your drinking buddy and your pal. That inner cozy life between New York Times, Washington Post, Washington Times, LA Times reporters and the people that they're covering is really problematic. So I could not, and the idea that like they didn't appreciate their little guest comedian at their insider roast that sort of mocks the rest of the society that's trying to figure out what's going on. It's always bothered me. In the Trump age, they should have shut that thing down and said, we are in a constitutional crisis. We have work to do. Shouldn't be dolling up like you're at some sort of an Academy Awards ceremony, like what you really are is a bunch of media moguls. That's what I think about that. And the other night, I had to go on this rant all by myself, sitting on my couch with nobody around. I was asking Alexa what she thought about it, and
your cell phone was just out of reach of the coffee table. You couldn't reach it to record what you were talking about.
Yeah, and I have no friends left to call about that. I've tried. I've called through, and
people they're just not answering at this point.
After 9:30, they just stop. They just stop answering, and I leave long voicemail messages. But no, so I don't care that the time when they roasted, singed, but didn't burn the politician. That's a very careful line that we all want to make sure we never cross with our comedians. Let's make sure we don't do that. And this one stepped over that line. It was a little high heat. Maybe you burned some oil in the kitchen and trying to cook that one, trying to roast that one. I think we should throttle that back. That's what you think the problem was? That the comedian overstepped a wee bit in how vitriolic she was? That was the thing? Not the fact that you're sitting there with Sarah Huckabee Sanders and comedians and reporters, and you're supposed to be holding this person, but then you're just like, hey, pal, sorry she was hard on you. See you tomorrow in the press room. Oh, my gosh. It is, as a non-conspiracy theorist, this is enough to push you over the edge, that all these people are in their own little cabal of let's make sure we all take care of each other, because at the end, we're all going to need a job.
All right, well, I just feel like you're baiting me into be the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead and advocate for that devil of the correspondence dinner.
Okay, well, let me talk you down from Tower 7 or Tower 11, right?
Building 7.
Building 7.
Tower 2.
Okay, these people work hard, I guess. All right. I mean, can't they just have a night out to booze together? And maybe it represent like even these people who are in conflict in their vocation can exist together in their private lives in some sort of, pretend friendship.
Sure. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with someone saying, hey, you're actually my friend. But when we get together, we're not talking business. We're talking friendship. So I might be friends with somebody who works in the White House. That's separate. We're not. What they do at this correspondence dinner is mix it all together. That's the very thing they're doing there. They're there not as friends. They're not palling around. It's a hard ticket to get. People get all dressed up. They put a big table up front, and it matters who's sitting next to whom. And they invite certain comedians to come in to add some gravitas to it. And then they're putting it on television. They're broadcasting it live. I mean, this isn't a bunch of friends that are like, man, it was a hard day. This is hard work holding the government accountable, and the government people saying it. This is really hard work trying to get our thing done while you guys are nipping at my heels. Like, hey, good for you. We're building a country here. We're part of the civic good. No, this is a bunch of people who think that they're also kind of media darlings and little media stars. And I watch these people all the time. Like I've got a number of news crushes, right? So I mean, these are people that I absorb their professional content and spend time.
Who's your favorite?
Spend time around them.
Stephanie Ruhle. Oop, did I say that?
No, she's not. She's not my favorite. My favorite new correspondent-y sort of a reporter person is Mimi Rocha.
I don't know who that is.
She was a federal prosecutor in for the Eastern District of New York, and with
look, Doug, your eyes are sparkling.
I know. She's sort of my favorite. And I'm going to tell you, because I might tag her in this. I got so bold the other day as to mention her in a comment on Twitter.
Oh,
yeah, and she liked it.
Get out!
And I showed it to people.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You got the screenshot of that?
I might have it hanging somewhere in my office. Anyway, no, but I think she's great. But so I like all these people, and I like it that people are moving from one sector into the other. And I don't mind if people go from being a politician to being a reporter, from being a reporter to being hired by the White House. Fair enough. But it's a lot of responsibility to be in the public good and to be doing work that should be integral to our constitutional bit. And I find the correspondence dinner to be problematic. But you probably have some thoughts about the comedy aspect of what the comedian did at this particular.
Sometimes a comedian is only as good as their audience.
Oh.
If you hear comedians talk about comedy, they will be like, "Hey, I was opening for this one guy, and he told these hacky jokes, and the audience just loved it. They ate it up, and it just made the comedian die inside." That's So it doesn't mean that you're a good comedian just because the people like your humor,
Right.
But if you're like killing it, and the audience isn't buying it. It makes a very, uncomfortable. I mean, as a viewer at home, you're like, this is awesome because guys really, or ladies really pushing the envelope or whatever. So watching it, you know, like if the response by those who were being roasted that was more like, you know, Reince Priebus, like, you know, hey, thanks for mentioning me, or ha ha ha, you know, rather than stone-faced and, you know.
And that's how they were? That was the response of the...
Well, I mean, yeah. And I think, and I honestly think that Miss Huckabee Sanders was unprepared for that, or maybe had the attitude of such that she's like not too important, but like I'm of such a status that things won't go that low. And so the only thing that I would care about the dinner was that if they came into it with the people who had organized it telling them like, no, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be a hatchet job. It's going to be light. And they went in there with their guard down and thinking it was going to be a pleasurable evening, and it turned into a bloodbath. You know, it was, you know, I mean, it was the Republican red wedding, you know, of roasts.
I got it, yeah.
So, I mean, that would be the only thing where I would be like, yeah, that's kind of unfair if they went in there thinking that, you know, hey, it was just going to be another good time, and it ended up being, you know, what it was. But I thought she was funny. I thought it was really funny.
Was it funny? I didn't because I'm too you know, wound up. So I didn't listen to it. Was it funny too? Like just as a general, like comedically, was it quality?
Yeah, I mean, there was like hits and misses. I think just like in any prior roast there's been, you know, not everything, you know, lands well. Or
I haven't seen any of the clips. Like I might see some of the other ones when I pay attention to.
I mean, some of the material is pretty cringeworthy, though. I mean, she goes, you know, at the
personal
to find the most soft, pink, tender spot in these jokes and aims for that.
Yeah.
What else you got, Doug?
Did you hear the story about the CEO who injected himself with experimental herpes treatment? And then he was found dead in a sensory deprivation tank? #FDA. So apparently this CEO...
Please tell me more. I got to know more.
Of Ascendance Biomedical, which is a little medical startup company. He was found dead in his flotation therapy tank on Sunday.
From super herpes?
Well, I think he's famous for injecting himself with a herpes treatment.
Like maybe to...
But that's sort of what made him famous. And then he got into a sensory deprivation tank to test some things.
Honey, honestly, I injected myself with herpes. This is, I mean, seriously, how else would I get herpes other than if I injected myself? I mean, believe me, dear.
It's one of those tragic stories where they're thinking back of, you know, the great discoverers of the polio vaccine, or, you know, a lot of these,
or like the Hulk vaccine. I mean, that's how like David Banner injected himself with, you know, rage medicine.
Did he? Was that the story?
Well, and then exposed himself to gamma rays.
He did it on purpose, or it happened in an experiment gone bad. I can't remember the story.
Well, I mean, I think it was both and. That he did it intentionally. I don't think he, you know, intended to create a monster.
The Incredible Hulk.
Right,
yeah.
But just to increase his...
Well, what I found interesting about that story is that it fits into the number of dead body found stories that we were talking about. That I'm nervous about talking, because, you know, that's tragedy. Like, that's a real tragedy for the person's family and everyone who cares about him and all of that. But there's just something about like a guy who's making his way by using his own body as the experiment.
Yeah, that's a real eccentric thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it had to be like, I've got the vaccine, and the way to prove this is to, like, you know, to shortcut the, you know, FDA, and prove it on himself. But then, you know, that
nice looking fella too.
That story has a lot of interesting things to it. Number one has a billionaire, right? Okay. Then it's got pharmaceuticals, which is like, you know, a mystery science stuff. It's got super herpes.
Yes.
I mean,
and a deprivation tank.
You want to go down a rabbit hole, go down the super herpes rabbit hole, and a deprivation tank. I mean,
Yeah, it's really it's a sitcom in the making.
That is a storyline, of a character there.
Yeah. Yeah, quite a guy. 28 years old too. Like, how do you end up there? Must have been a boy genius.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to find like a ton of acid or something in his system.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Yeah.
Well,
that was a good story.
Sorry for his family.
Oh, but can you imagine? Like, hey, where's Kenneth? Well, he's been in the deprivation tank for like 9 hours.
Well, that's anytime that someone has to be discovered is a horrible story.
And that would be a pretty preserved, because it's basically you're kind of simmering in a brine anyway. And so there's other bodies that have been found, Doug. And I know you're tiptoeing here.
Tiptoeing around it. I'm uncomfortable.
There's a man that was found in a wall behind a women's bathroom in a mall.
Yeah.
A deceased man.
That's right. Yeah, that's the story. Some accidental death of a fellow that was trying to get behind a women's stall.
How did they know he was there, Doug?
Well, the story as I read it was that they had to come in to repair the toilet for not functioning properly. It turns out because it was being blocked by his body. And they opened up the access panel, and some poor repair person was startled to
discover
to no end.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I can't imagine what that would look like.
Yeah, it's just... But again, tragedy for the...
And here recently, last week, or a couple weeks ago, they're remodeling a Dayton's department store, and they open some ventilation, and they find a mummified monkey that, back in the 20s, 30s, or 40s, apparently, monkeys were more common than they are today in Minnesota.
Yeah. There was a time when there were monkeys at the local department stores. It's of course you couldn't keep track of all the monkeys that you had at the Dayton store.
Like at the end of the shift, the guy's like, "One, two, fuck it."
I don't know. They keep moving around. I can't.
I think I counted him twice. Chim, that's it on it. They're all there.
Yeah, I didn't hear that story previously. Do you know any details on it? Like, why was there a monkey in the Dayton store to begin with?
Well, I mean, they had to do some like forensic pathology, like historical pathology of the store. And it turns out that in that area there was a pet place, and I'm unsure if they sold the monkeys, which...
No. Was there ever a time you could buy a monkey at a store in this country?
Doug, in Minnesota, like maybe a mile from your house, there would be, or from your church, there were parks where they would have cages full of monkeys.
No.
In Minneapolis. All over.
Cages of monkeys in the public parks.
You would go to the park and there would be this big kind of bird cage.
Are you sure you're not just talking about the Como Zoo? In public parks. What years was this? Like in the 20s or in the 1800s?
Are you familiar with a man named Jim Jones?
Of community formation fame? That guy?
Yes.
I mean, things went wrong for him right at the end with the deprivation tank and all, but...
In Indiana, in Indianapolis, where he was raised as a minister, he would sell monkeys from the trunk of his car. I'm telling you.
I do think I remember hearing that he sold monkeys out of the back of his car.
The place was thick with monkeys.
Is this why when I was a kid, we used to play with that little game called the Barrel of Monkeys, where you'd open that little plastic barrel and lift a monkey out and see how many of them would have their arms hooked together? Because they were just a common play toy?
That was like fun for like 3 minutes.
When did the monkeys fall from public grace to not be?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I mean, there must have been some sort of crackdown, I imagine.
You could buy a monkey in Indianapolis or Minneapolis.
Well, in Indianapolis, like in the 70s.
Or if you're on an airplane and people say, "Welcome to Minneapolis," because they confuse Indianapolis and Minneapolis.
Yeah, you can't change course.
Yeah, all the way up to the 60s was probably when Jim Jones was selling them, late 60s, somewhere in there, right? Because the Jim Jones thing was mid-70s.
Yeah.
50s and 60s, you could buy a monkey out of the back of a car.
Well, you apparently could buy one at Dayton's. And then one of them little shits got loose and got into the duct. Okay, but at the end of the duct, duct.
Duct, yes.
Yeah.
As in the tape.
Big ass fan. Blurring fan.
Okay.
They found the monkey. Huge gash in its head.
No.
Yes. It climbed it. I'm sorry, folks. It climbed into the vent, and
there are many people who are more bothered by this than the man in the deprivation tank. But
he's a millionaire. I mean, come on.
That's right.
Just chock full of
but the
super
monkey,
herpes.
The monkey didn't even need money. He was so post money.
That's right. Just one little thing.
So the thought is he walked into it or it turned on?
Yeah, we don't know. That's for the writers to determine.
All right. So of all the, as long as we're going to get into animal death stories, let's just go. Of the many animals that have been in our care that have not that lived and passed away in our care, there have been a number. Mostly hamsters and birds. One of our birds died when we had him flying around the house. He was a parakeet. I think we called him I don't know.
Tweety?
Yeah, something like that. Perky, Tweety, bluebird, something like that. This blue parakeet. And right over there, just on the other side of the studio here, is our laundry area. And for whatever reason, we still to this day, and this 15 years ago, had an open pipe that comes from our tank, our sink, the wash sink, and then dumps into the drain in the floor.
Yeah.
Now, in most civilized houses, that's enclosed. Ours just comes with a PVC pipe, and then it sort of pools up around a little. We live in an old house. It's been that way for a very, very long time. So
I could really act disgusted and not know what you're talking about, but I totally know what you're talking about.
So we've never fixed that. So what happens is that the washer, when it's washing, fills up with water and then releases that water into the big sink, the tub,
the laundry sink,
and then it drains out of a PVC pipe and then into this
the floor drain,
the basin. So the poor little bird, sweet little guy that we love so dearly, was flying around the house and was sitting down there sipping some water.
Sipping some gray water. When the washing machine released all this water, and this torrent of water, I've seen it. It's a torrent,
came rushing out of that thing, and he didn't survive. So we came downstairs, and there was
there a body?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was the poor little guy. Poor little guy. Can I tell you our other bird died in our house story? So then we got another bird. Right, because apparently we think we're people that should care for animals.
You know, before you go into this, Doug, I just got a dog 4 or 5 months ago.
You did?
It's a perfect animal, and I was like, something about you just didn't sit right with me that you didn't like dogs.
Yeah, I don't care for animals.
Yeah, you don't care for animals, but now it's coming to light is that you're just not a very good caretaker of these things.
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, I like Charlie, Victor's dog. Great dog. If I ever got a dog, it would be steal Charlie. But I don't care for them, and I don't care for them well. As I think what it is. I think that's probably why I just resist being around them, because I know I'm not good for animals.
So what happened to the other bird?
Well, he was flying about the house, as we let our birds do. It just seemed cruel to keep the little guy in a cage. So when we were home, we'd have him flying around. And then sometimes we would leave and we'd forget where he was. And we were remodeling our kitchen.
Okay.
And we extended the sitting area in our kitchen 18 inches or so. And it's kind of a little raised platform sort of area. And our bird was missing, and we couldn't find it. And we were pretty sure that the bird had gotten out of the house at some point. But the first few days, weeks that the bird was gone, every once in a while we would hear this bird somewhere in the house chirping. We'd hear a bird chirping. It's as irritating and hard to find as like the smoke detector battery chirping. Just that quick little chirp chirp, and then you're like, what were that? And then it pauses and chirp. 2 years later, we have to fix something under this little platform area of our extended kitchen, and realized that somehow the poor little guy had crawled into some little space, and when we were remodeling,
entombed it.
We entombed him.
The telltale heart. Oh my God.
And he was entombed under our feet,
listening to your voices, your comforting voices,
chirping for sweet little life.
Oh my God.
Good morning, everyone. Well, death inhabits life. It doesn't bookend life. Just remember that.
Well, I have a story about death.
Okay. Yeah, this is gone.
Let's roll with it.
Yeah.
It's about the death of a relationship, Doug.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Where's your...
Okay.
Right.
Well, now, this is not funny. This matters.
Rick Okasek and Paulina Porzavakova. Note that I put Okasek first in the title.
Yeah.
Most publications put Porzavakova first.
How long did you work on the pronunciations of those names?
It just comes natural. My linguistic skills are... But I'm like, come on. He's in the fucking Cars. Don't put Porzavakova first. It's Okasek.
Oh, I see.
He's way more important than she is.
I didn't know Okasek was in the Cars. He's a musician. Yeah, I didn't know the names.
Oh,
of the
I'm
people
sorry.
In the Cars.
I dropped that name, and you were like, "Who's Rick Okasek?"
The name. Yeah.
Yeah, the tall, skinny guy with the black hair.
Is that the only way the last name is pronounced? I feel like I know.
Kasich?
Yeah, so Kasich, I would have said.
Yeah.
I thought it was Kasich, Rick Kasich.
You know,
but it's
after
Okasek.
I pronounced Porzavakova, you think you would trust me in the Okasek?
I do trust you. That's why I didn't recognize it, though. I thought his name was Rick Kasich. Or he was Italian or Irish, and he was Kasich.
The Cars sold 17 million albums, and the prolific former supermodel, who was once the highest paid model in the world, announced on Instagram that the couple who have been married for 28 years have peacefully separated over the past year.
Oh.
She, a quote in her Instagram account, "Our family has been and still is a well-built car." Porzavakova wrote in her post. She is 52 and absolutely stunning.
As are you.
And he is 72 and looks like warm death.
Rick Kasich is...
Okasek.
Is 72 years old.
72 years old, yeah.
Wow.
And like this is a band that kind of has the distinction of like being like a definition of kind of a genre of music or a period of music.
Yeah.
But really when you think about their music, it's very difficult to describe. Because you've got because at a time when music used to swing, when rock swung, this kind of post-punk new wave music kind of captured on the sound of industry and the soulless kind of machinations. Okay. So when you listen to the Cars, the music is very mechanical, you know? And the thing that really breathes the life into the music is the vocals that come into it and the amazing guitar playing of Elliot Easton.
Yeah. And so for people who don't know, your ability to know the names of band members of 1970s and 80s rock bands is unparalleled.
I think it's because I smoked a lot of pot in high school.
That made you remember things.
No, it's just I can't remember anything after that
I
period.
I see. It's all locked in.
That's right.
All your brain matter was used.
The cells remember that for whatever reason. Yeah. So they're divorced. Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah. So they sold 17 million albums. That's a lot.
It is.
I mean, the hyper rarefied area of people who can sell that many albums.
Yeah, and they're done. I mean, I don't hear Cars music anymore. Or are they still touring the casinos and playing the small shops?
Well, the bass player and like main singer, Benjamin Orr, died like in the 90s, maybe, of pancreatic cancer.
Oh,
so they didn't tour. And one thing I didn't think about is that their first album sold 4 million copies, and their second album sold 6, or maybe it was the other way around. But then the third, if you look at like popular bands, it's that third album.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this was in a time when you could have, if you were good, 4 hit songs on an album. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You just that's unheard of anymore. You just need one now to make it. But these guys had 4 or 5 songs in each album. But then the third album only sold 2 million.
Oh.
And so usually this is the beginning of the end. They've had, and they can do their casino tours based on that. But their fourth album came out and sold like another 6 million albums.
Huh.
But it was really shitty. It's at you might think I'm crazy, or it's magic, that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean the Cars songs that I might have in my playlist?
Cretin. All right, that's enough about that.
Hey, the Border Patrol, they found a tiger inside of a duffel bag. He was tranquilized.
Oh, okay.
But there were people trying to smuggle a duffel bag in across the border of Mexico and Texas. And they guys ran off and left a duffel bag, and when they opened it up, again, that experience of it's like home videos, of surprising people. Open it up, and there's a tiger.
Could you imagine the Border Patrol guards are like, is that bag moving?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know this to be true, but my guess is that there's times where the Border Patrol, just like if they find something, they just like take it home with them, Yeah. You got to wonder if on this one they're like, hey, I'm taking the tiger home. Like, mum's the word on the tiger thing. Let's take the tiger home.
Do like rock, paper, scissors. Who gets to take the baby Bengal tiger home?
Yeah.
Wow.
I like that story a lot. I just like the idea that that you could, I don't know, in a boring life of a Border Patrol, which is a mundane life, I've heard. You're chasing guys and just the same crowd all the time, and you're kind of working out your own thing, driving the long distances on the U.S.
Like every month, somebody
Mexico
says,
border.
"Hey, you remember when you found that tiger?" It's like 3 months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, well,
you tell that story forever when you open it up, and there's a tiger in the bag.
Hey, Doug, you do a lot of air traveling.
I do.
Well, it happened again. A Southwest airline flight from Chicago to Newark was diverted to Cleveland when cracks developed in one of the fuselage windows. Mm-hmm. And the plane landed safely. There was no injuries or fatalities or anything. They said it was just the outside window, which I guess I'm relieved to know there's two.
There are two.
More. I don't know. And that probably the little hole down at the bottom.
Yeah, that's in those windows.
Is what prevented the window from blowing out when it cracked, because it creates some sort of equalization or something like that. Huh. I don't know. It's science.
It is amazing that all the parts and pieces on an airplane, that there aren't more problems like have happened with this one, or that propeller breaking.
Yeah, and that was the first airplane death in like 7 years.
Yeah.
Which is 7 years, all the flights that happen, without a fatality.
Stuff just like that doesn't happen. It's amazing. But everyone's prepared for it all the time. Like, you're given these warnings, as you know, when you get on an airplane, that like they give you very specific levels of warnings about what to do if the plane's in trouble. I don't think they understand education theory. Like that in the midst of a crisis, you're going to remember the talk from 14 minutes ago about the order in which you're supposed to do something, where you could find your life vest. But they're very prepared for terrible things to happen. And I ask flight attendants very often, I'll say to them, hey, you ever seen one of the oxygen masks come down? I've never met a flight attendant who has had an oxygen mask come down.
Yeah.
They'll say like, no. I said, oh, so you don't actually know if the bag inflates or not. Like that's just a whole thing that's just in theory, right? They've never even been on a plane where I wondered when I first started flying if they took like flight attendants and put them through this experience in a simulator or something.
Oh, that'd be a good idea.
Like here's what it feels like when the cabin is depressurized, and here's what happens when a mask comes down, and here's they just.
They're not astronauts. They're put them in that the centrifuge.
They've just heard rumors like all the rest of us that, I don't know, the bag inflates, the bag doesn't inflate, and then something like this happens. And
well, as a child of the 70s, where there were a number of movies about airplanes and airplane disasters, the notion of getting sucked out of the airplane is always present.
Yeah.
You just, that's what happens. And to hear that it actually happened is pretty like, wow.
Yeah, that's a real possibility.
That's possible, yeah.
That's a real possibility.
But this one, there was no injuries, no fatalities. don't think anybody got any gift certificates.
No trauma, no trauma certificates.
Look,
I think every emergency landing they end up sending a little something to the passenger. They're so freaked out about this going bad.
I'm not as fast as agile as I used to be. If I'm sitting next to that window that's cracking, you can see me Spider-Man crawl out of that.
You're going right over the heads of the people around you.
You better believe it.
Yeah, you're not waiting and helping those around you.
No.
Well, don't sit in the emergency exit row because you have to make a vow out loud to all the other people around you that in the case of an emergency, you will help. Those 6 people or 9 people or whatever it is in the size plane that sit in those rows.
No. That obligation only happens
vow.
when you're on the ground.
Oh, that's true.
You're not going to be forcing that door open in midair, right, and helping people then. I think the rule only takes effect when you land.
Oh, you're saying that even if you're sitting there, you could Spider-Man over the top of the seats in front of you to get out of the way, and then come back and help with the emergency exit door.
Well, yeah, if we live, yes, yeah. I will help people down then.
Yeah, the chute.
What else you got, Doug?
I'm a bad speller, and this last week I sent out an email to 9,987 people that had 3 spelling mistakes in it. They were actually typos, but there's no difference to a bad speller. It's all the same. It's all the same trauma. Mm-hmm. And I found myself connecting with the humanity of our president, who deleted 9 tweets while he was trying to spell subpoena properly. He'll post a tweet. He misspells all the time. He's also a bad speller, which I used to think was going to keep me from being the president, but now,
yeah, it turns out it's not
in 2020.
It's not a requirement.
He apparently there's a string that people keep track. Even if you delete a tweet, they're captured somewhere, right? And so people are paying attention to his Twitter feed all the time. 9 times. There's 9 tweets in a row where he's trying to spell subpoena properly. So you're a solid speller. Yeah?
Subponea.
Yes. Yeah. Subpoena.
I think to the average 7th grader, that might be a difficult word to just, there's words that I have trouble spelling and I use them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Belief. Is that one of those? The I-N-E's that ever get you?
Yeah.
What gets you? What's the thing that throws you in your
well, it is an I-N-E and receipt.
Yeah.
I have to use that word in my work, and it's like I know how it's spelled. It's just
yeah. For me, it's any of the words with silent L's, and I have a name with a silent letter. Pagitt is spelled with 2 T's, and sometimes I suggest to people.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels to that.
That is the first T. It's the first T that's silent. Yeah, which L is silent in parallel. I don't know which one I would find.
The second one. There's 3.
Yes. Yeah. Is it? And that's just. I don't know. I get it that it comes out of these are root words that come from other languages, and so they can. But boy, it seems like we could just straighten that whole thing up a bit.
Yeah, it seems like something a llama could do.
Here we go. Let's keep going. Of the children that my wife knows about that I have, one of them is named Taylor.
What is it? What you just say? How did you describe your spawn?
The children that my wife knows about.
Okay.
That I have. One of them is named Taylor, and I find him to be a fairly funny fella. And he had never heard someone describe phonetically spell their name to someone on the phone.
Oh.
And his girlfriend was doing this, and it struck him as funny.
Yeah.
So he just comes up with, well, I'm going to call people and say it's Pagitt. P is in pterodactyl, A is in isle, G is in gnome. That's hilarious.
Yes.
And T is in tsunami. Mm-hmm. So we just need one for the I. I think that's a funny bit that people should spell their name phonetically with the silent letters.
Yeah, I have to do that too in my job. I have to use the NATO phonetic alphabet.
Oh, you do? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a standard set of these that everyone in the medical profession.
Well, I mean, there's kind of like a accepted wide military, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, but inevitably people will be like, it's M for mother,
I do that all
Mike.
the time. Yeah.
Or N as in Nancy.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be November. And some of them you got to be careful because in some cultures, some of those terms you don't want to use.
Huh. Do you know all of them? Do you know all the letters of the alphabet by their what did you call it? Their
The phonetic.
Oh, just the phonetic. It's not. Yeah. That's all it is. The phonetic.
Well, there's
alphabet.
a NATO phonetic.
A NATO phonetic.
Yeah, so that all the people that as they're talking over their walkie-talkies know what you're spelling.
Yeah, back to airplane pilots, they use all that.
Yeah.
Do you know all of it? You
Boy. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot.
That two-worder. G.
I don't think I know what G is. I mean, if I heard, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah. H.
Halo. I don't know what I would be.
J.
It's a cool one.
It's a cool one.
Yeah. K, I think, is Kilo. L is Lima.
Lima.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
M is Mike. N is November.
M is Mike. Mm-hmm. M-I-C?
Yeah.
M-I-K-E.
M-I-K-E.
Yeah. Really? Mike.
Yeah.
N is November.
November.
O?
I think it's no, it can't be October.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know what O is. Huh. Yeah,
Give
me 10 minutes and
then there's other ones.
Process of elimination, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Z is zebra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Z is zebra. I think I knew that one. I know A is in apple. Z is in zebra. I think that's all the ones I knew.
No, it's A is alpha.
What did I say?
Apple.
Oh, jeez.
So that's the difference.
I didn't even
That's the
know
difference
that.
between the second grade and the NATO military.
I thought I knew those too.
Right.
Nope, I knew one of them.
Although Apple is probably the number one that when people do spell it phonetically, they'll say Apple because of that. That's what they're taught as a kid.
Yeah.
Because do you really want to teach a 1-year-old what alpha is?
Yeah. Right.
You, beta, you better get used to that one.
That's right. Yeah, and then it goes omega, and it's like all these kind of Greek terms, and then Mike.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's probably omega still.
Omega, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
Got anything else, Doug?
I had a couple things.
All right.
But,
Are you untrumped? Did you did the White House dinner? Did that?
No,
was that cathartic enough for you?
No, that was just my general disappointment with the press corps.
A lot of wild things going on in
A lot of wild things.
I mean,
it's really bad.
The past 3 or 4 days is
if you watched it last night, if you watched any of the updates on what happened last night, Giuliani,
yes,
used to be the country's mayor. Mm-hmm. In the way that the Dallas Cowboys were America's football team.
Sure.
Like, really? No, you're not the country's mayor. You never were the country's mayor. But anyway, the Penguin has gone off his rails and was talking to Sean Hannity last night.
Yeah, this is pretty nuts.
Of flip house and exploit people who are oppressed by the mortgage crisis fame, Sean Hannity. That guy. Doesn't make enough money just being a TV and radio. I'm just going to be petty and jealous for a minute. He also is going to make money off the backs of people who are struggling to get themselves into secure housing by owning big portions of a company that does that. But anyways, talking to Sean.
I like this anti-capitalism thing coming from you.
I don't mind capitalism at all. These people, okay, now you put a quarter in it. That's not capitalism what they're doing. It's the it's the alternative to capitalism, which is some kind of exploitive cronyism utilizing the rules of the government to your advantage against someone else. Capitalism would want to make the playing ground fair. Anyway, Sean. But he was talking with Mr. Hannity, and it opens up on a whole bunch of things about the president that I think my read on it, they intentionally went out to share because neither Giuliani nor Trump understand what in this particular case, what campaign finance violation people are suggesting Michael Cohen paying the lawyer of Stormy Daniels what it violated, which was not that the money came from a campaign account. It's that you spent money to influence the outcome of the campaign, so that needs to be a campaign expenditure. So him saying like, oh, no, Trump paid him back. I mean, it didn't come out of campaign funds. That's not the point. This clown show of, and I don't know anything. I'm not a lawyer. I just
you
know
don't think that
Mimi,
was a slip of the tongue of him? You think that?
I don't. I mean, I only know what Mimi Roca tells me, but it's
hashtag Mimi Roca.
Hashtag Mimi Roca. The accusations brought to you by the people from the Correspondents' Dinner is that they violated campaign by not reporting that as a contribution toward the campaign. That's the problem, which isn't all that. I mean, people do get fined for that, and if you do a lot of it, you can kind of go to jail. So it's not really a criminal.
It would seem Trump paying them back would be even like more erroneous, because he could say like, "Oh, I didn't know anything about it. It was my lawyer's doing."
Right.
Whereas now he is in the decision making. He is, and there's a trail of money from him to, to Stormy Daniels, rather than having plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Like, hey, my lawyers handle that stuff all the time. I don't really,
So here's what I think happened. Do you want my rundown of what I think happened? I mean, who would care? Me, I care. Here's what I think happened. I think Trump is telling the truth about the fact that he didn't know the specifics. And what Giuliani said last night is, look, Trump keeps a guy like Cohen on retainer, and he pays money into a retainer fund. And then Cohen can draw from that fund for legal expenses. When Cohen runs into something where his client needs to pay somebody to keep them quiet, he just accesses that fund. That fund didn't have the money in it, so he used his own money to float until he could access it from that fund, and then had to sort of prod Trump to get money back into the fund. So over time, Trump reimbursed the retainer fund. So it's quite possible that their working relationship is Trump saying, hey, handle that stuff for me. I totally trust you. I don't even care what it is. If you think it needs to be paid, pay it. So he didn't need to know the details. What he said was, Michael, you're my guy. Go fix that whenever it needs to get fixed. Like somebody might say to the plumber, like, hey, I don't need to come there and approve every bit of work you're going to do in my house. Fix the leak. And then the plumber fixes the leak and says, I'm going to take that out of the money that you owe me, but you owe me another $10,000 for the other work that I did. But you're not standing there approving each one. So the homeowner could say, I didn't know what they were doing. I just knew he was fixing the problem. Right? That's how you keep professional lawyers on retainer. That's one of the things you do. So I think that's what happened. Trump didn't need to know, and that's why Trump never signed that contract as Dennison or whatever his false little name on there, right? Because he didn't even bother to give it to him to sign it. Now, Stormy Daniels' attorney in the soap opera that is now the president of the United States is saying, well, that contract then, because it had this Dennison's name on it as an assumed name for Trump, it's not valid. She's not held to it, unless he wants to say that he intended to sign it and it just missed a signature. So they're putting him in a box one way or the other. But I think it's very possible that Trump could say, I didn't know about that specific payment, the details. But I did have a guy that just went and fixed those problems for me. That doesn't help him politically, and it actually doesn't help him on the campaign finance problem. But I think the idea that how could Trump not know but then know, or give the actual authority, I think is actually quite plausible for how a lot of wealthy people utilize an attorney. And that to people like you and me and Stormy Daniels, $130,000 would ring like a lot of money, but to a wealthy person, to keep that away from your wife and the public eye, you'd be comfortable spending that kind of money. That's what I think is going on.
And so it seems to me that unless Cohen has been employed on the regular, like this sort of thing is so common, like it's like one thing to be like, hey, I took care of those unpaid parking tickets, but this seems like this is a big thing, for a lawyer to withhold from his client, especially someone who is so media conscious as Trump, especially something that makes him look dirty, like, being with a porn star. I'm not sure that, it seems like that would be something that he would fill the boss in on.
I think it's the whole idea of why you keep someone like Cohen. So you don't actually have to know it and deal with it. And you can say, I'm not even privy to the...
Well, yeah, you can say that, but I still think that probably the relationship is such as that, that he doesn't, hey, there's something brewing on the horizon here.
Yeah, yeah, right. I think there were so many of those things, though, that this one actually from 6 years ago, and that it involved his wife, and that's the backstory. The people who seem to be in the know are saying about this is that the real fear here was that Melania was going to find out that he was stepping out on her while she's home taking care of the little one.
And they just entered like, a soap opera now, right?
Yes, totally. Now you're into, so what he was trying to, he was fighting on multiple fronts. The level of the chicken coming home to roost in his life, that it was totally plausible to me that he would have said to Cohen, just go solve that thing. But that's what Cohen will say is, I was charged with going to solve that thing on his behalf because it was going to hurt his family relationship. And if that had come out during the election, that would have been a real problem. So my job was to find it and not tell the boss about it.
So,
which is even worse. This is politically, I think that's even worse for him, that people would say, like, he just has so many of these going on that he doesn't even want to know, and is just willing to pay women for false accusations. Like, why are there not 50 women lined up saying, well, hey, if you're handing out checks to not falsely accuse you, if there's no accusation, this is the problem, right?
Well, okay.
Can I finish my analogy? It would be like Trump saying, I didn't need plumbing done, but someone said I needed plumbing done, so I sent the plumber over, and they spent $130,000 to fix the plumbing that actually wasn't even broken.
So
that's the problem.
So I understand the rationale of your analogy, but does that absolve Trump of any liability from the actions of his attorney? For instance, if let's say you're on trial, you have a lawyer, and you get up, they're going to share the verdict. You're announced guilty. Based upon that lawyer's defense of your actions or whatever, you were found guilty. You can't then stand up and go, whoa, no, do-over. I didn't know what he was doing. Like your attorney represents you in that situation. You're going to jail or paying the fine. Yeah. The attorney's going to go home. So in this situation, isn't still Trump? You just can't go like, I just pay people and they commit crimes on my behalf. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that like, no, you should have known all of that stuff that was going on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's why I'm not absolving him or saying that this storyline absolves him from the responsibility.
But that's probably the only high ground he has.
But it could resolve him. It could just be truthful that he didn't know the details of this particular one. And Cohen's job was to handle it on his behalf and let him know later if he needs to. that he had the authority to make those deals on his behalf. That doesn't absolve him from the responsibility, but it explains how Trump could say at one moment, I didn't know about the payments. Is a different question than, should you have known? Do you just have your attorney out striking deals for you? Well, sure, I should have known, but that's not a thing that now, if he committed a crime on your behalf, you are legally culpable because you should have known. That's a different question than, did you actually know? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Right, yeah.
So I think we could for people who are into the details on all of this. I mean, I feel like I'm one of the Lord of the Rings fans that is talking about some kind of inconsistency between the fan fiction writing and the actual story. But so I think it very well could have been truthful that he didn't know. Should he have known? And the question is, did somebody commit a crime? And if so, what was the crime? It's possible that, and I think likely, if you listen to Mimi Roca, that Michael Cohen is accused of some crimes that caused the subpoena to be issued that might have come from other activities not associated with only this payment, and everything he knows is going to become a part of explaining how Trump has operated in the world, and that's what could really get him in trouble. Trump could be in trouble for things that none of us have any clue about yet, and it's going to become real fodder in the future.
And I think this is telling towards the ego of Trump, in the sense that the judge had just announced that these two cases cannot go on simultaneously. The felony or the election campaign issue investigation cannot go on at the same time as the Stormy Daniels thing.
Civil suit
suit
getting out of the contract.
That has to be done after.
Yeah.
So that essentially, besides just them being a squeaky wheel in the corner, took away any immediacy.
Yes.
That case had for them. And so, just instead of letting that just smolder and die,
Giuliani goes on to Sean Hannity, and
because Trump is so concerned that he is, his, and honestly, his fan base would be like, well, that's a cool guy. He's out there screwing porn stars. That's a bonus, but there's some sort of thing that he doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to be like Clinton.
Yeah, he doesn't want to let that one.
So so he's like, no, we've got to let's wrap this up. And every time they do, it seems that
they're unwrapping the other side.
They could have died and simmered down, but.
Yeah, it's like they have a twin-size sheet on this queen-sized bed, and they keep pulling it from one side, and it exposes the other side, and they're kind of pulling the thing back and forth. It's and then this doctor business. Did you follow the story about the doctor?
Yeah,
that Trump dictated to him how to write this story, which everyone sort of knew,
right?
Because what doctor speaks like that other than the White House doctor? Which I think what's going to come out for that Ronnie Jackson cat is that that he spoke about Trump in a way because he really wanted to be in Trump's favor, which ultimately led to him being the nominee for the Veteran Affairs cabinet position. If they close that circle, there's some real trouble brewing. Like if that doctor came out and said things about Trump.
Yeah, that's what would have to happen. I mean, unless they had recordings or something like that.
That's a whole other level. Or one of his attorneys was the one that mentioned that to him, one of his attorneys that is now quit.
And I think that kind of brings us, like what we talked about last week, is that, like, why is it, when I think about like these, in my naivete, like it seems like these cabinet positions, these people that are in these government offices should be like the best that you could obtain. Regardless of your obviously some of these positions, your political affiliation is going to make a difference or whatever, but it seems like the presidents that you kind of like the most kind of had other people from the other team fulfilling some of these roles because their expertise demanded
they're good at
that skill, right? And so just the White House doctor, which is I would say a prestigious, like I would put a win on that. It's probably got a pretty good retirement benefits. You
Yeah,
know?
right. It's a military assignment. I think it's through his naval
But to
commissioning.
be, in charge of the
VA.
one of the largest troubled bureaucracies.
Okay, so I have a theory on this. Mm-hmm. All the secretary positions are ultimately, I think there's 12 of them or 11 of them. Not how many are there? I don't know. They're all areas that the president is responsible for. Mm-hmm. And the way of the structure is to have a person who is your designate to fulfill that department's job. What someone like Trump cannot tolerate is for someone more competent than him to be fulfilling his duty. So he has limited how competent any of the secretaries can be so that they don't show him to be he doesn't want to hire someone more competent than him to fulfill his responsibilities. So he surrounds himself with a very well-known secretaries, but that are no more competent at the job than he is, because he needs to stay at the top of a pile.
And that's like the two sides of the same coin. In that something when you behave, being around church leadership. I mean, you've seen a lot of prototypes of this, and I've been a practitioner of these behaviors as a leader myself. But where you either think of that person as if they're a little bit smarter than you or more gifted than you or whatever, like it threatens your status.
Nice, yeah,
right. So it's from a sense of weakness. Mm-hmm. That if the worship leader gets a little too popular, I'm going to take him down a peg. No, you're only going at 2 Sundays a month or whatever. I've never done that. I've been. Give my worship leaders too much freedom.
Yeah, I can't imagine you would ever do that.
They're like, I need a little structure.
Yeah. Right.
Or it comes from that real sense of megalomania that I don't care how smart anybody else is, I'm capable of being just as smart as they are.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. And Trump's way of doing it is it's a kind of leadership. I've seen his style of leadership in a lot of settings. It's a brute force and charm tactic. And that works for a lot of people and gets them to a lot of levels of success. It's very difficult to do that under the glare of any kind of deep analysis and observation, though. It strikes people as odd, like using your charm to pull someone close and then kind of just jamming them. So when he sent his former private security person, who was then the White House security chief, the Schiller fella, and a couple other guys over to that doctor's office to collect his records. Yeah, like that is some Kevin Spacey in what's that show on Netflix?
Game or House of Cards.
House of Cards kind of business, right? Like these thugs show up at 7:30 in the morning at a doctor's office and come busting in and take the pictures off the wall and take all the stuff away. That when this whole picture starts to get painted of Trump, and people begin to realize that how it's all operating, and it gets laid out in a way that it's not funny anymore, and it's not just, well, that's kind of how stars are, that it's lawyers that have the authority to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to quiet people. It's men showing up into offices and utilizing the White House power to come in and take records. And I'm sure there's going to be more and more of these kinds of stories of the kind of thuggery pressure that when he's charming or that kind of way, and like, hey, Macron, or hey, Merkel, or I'm your buddy, and we're just gonna work out a deal. Let's just see if we can make it work, Nancy and Chuck. Let's see if we can, whip up a deal. That to people are like, hey, I like a guy that's in there kind of making it happen. Yeah. When people start to realize that it's Nixon-like thuggery and threats and payoffs and silencing and intimidation, there's something in the American psyche, even for evangelicals who support him, that kind of thing will really wear thin. It has to. I mean, I'm hoping for the better angels of our sensitivity here.
If only the angels existed, Doug. I think if
See, that's why you atheists, nobody wants you around, because you can't even use a better angels, because you're like, well, everything is just death.
Lincoln, wrong.
You're all going to end up in the back of a women's toilet behind a wall of some kind, just dying in abject emptiness.
Look, you can have
carpe diem.
You can have any kind of personality you want. All right. I mean, I think they all can be successful and whatever.
I think you're right. Yep.
And there's obviously something about the plain spoken or the cult of personality that is around Trump that is appealing to some people for some reason. The problem is that like people who have that personality, that if it's just them, if it's just their will, it's just very like offensive to me. Like if they have a cause, like it's different. Like with maybe like how Johnson, handled things, with a lot of charisma, kind of like some kind of strong arming political stuff.
Yeah,
but it wasn't like.
It was to pass Medicare or something.
right. Civil rights laws, It's like, I'm going to make you uncomfortable because we want to, benefit these, he wasn't a saint either. But when, like, what is, it's not even for, like, even if it was like, I'm the standard bearer of the Republican creed, that you'd be okay. Like, at least the source of this energy is coming from this cause, but with him, it's just unbridled evil.
Yeah, it's just right.
Which I do believe in, by the way.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Tomorrow, I'm talking with Bart Campolo.
Oh yeah,
a newly minted humanist. He is the zeal of the newly unconverted.
Welcome out of the family.
Yeah. So I will ask him about that one too, about this evil thing. You should come on the Talk to the Non-Believers cast.
When do you do that?
Well, tomorrow it's happening in the early afternoon. I think it's at 1:00.
Okay. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, sometimes I'm bored, and
I saw the look on your face a few minutes ago.
And I will watch some of your interviews.
Yeah,
because we used to be on a radio show together.
I remember.
Yeah, and we interviewed a lot of people,
a lot of interesting people. We interviewed a lot of people.
So there's sometimes I'll watch, and I'll heckle as if I'm on the mic.
Really?
Yeah, you'll be talking about something, and something will be like, that's what she said. That would have killed. Yeah.
Just like the high school athlete going back and watching the old tapes.
Yeah, right.
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah.
If the coach had just let me stay in one more play, we could have. If we hadn't punted on 4th down, we would have.
I got to say that's totally your wheelhouse, Doug. Because
interviewing people.
Well, I'm just saying the people, the authors mostly.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Look, what you need to be is an author speaker. Because authors are good writers, not often. And I'm not saying this about any recent interview that you did or anything like that. Mm-hmm. This can be a little. Yeah, I mean, you do your best.
I do my best.
You do your best.
Yeah. I'm kind of making a deal with the listenership that we're in this together. The two of us are, we're trying to get something out of this person that's interesting and valuable and a little bit of fun. That's what I sort of hope is happening. That people realize that these people are interesting and. We're going to do the best we can to pull it out of them. Yes, there's something in there.
Yeah, let's hear that voice out loud.
Yeah. It doesn't always work.
I think we flogged this one to death, Doug.
You think?
Yeah.
Hour and 20 minutes?
Hour and 20.
Too much?
I think we can go back and cut 60 of that out and be...
Really? Should we break it into 2?
No.
Should we?
No, discard half of it.
Oh, just cut it.
I'm being facetious. I don't know.
Well, we could do that and then offer as a Patreon pitch the full episode.
Well, maybe
somebody's got to pay for it.
Maybe if we do that, we should get the higher resolution full size picture.
It looks great on there. They can't tell that it's. right, I'm done. You
All right.
done?
All right. Hey, see you guys next week, next Thursday at whenever in the morning
Sometime in the morning,
with Doug and John.
depending on where you live, I guess.
It's true.
We pushed this one so late. No, I think we're still in the morning. Is it still morning now?
This is the morning in Pacific time.
No, we're just two middle-aged men in a basement. In a studio.
Like so many are.